So moving on to the 10-pound packaging. This is the first machine that was in North America, as far as I know, created these 10-pound packaging. Also excellent for retail as well. We put the white or colored rags in there, and with our new logo, presents really, really well. Again, the idea here is that compressed packaging takes up a lot less room than the standard box that most everybody else was doing back in the day. Literally, it could be as much as a third the space of what a regular standard box would be. To give you an example, we used to do about 20 to 25 boxes on a standard pallet of 25 pounds. Today, in terms of a 25-pound bag, which we'll introduce here, we can get 66. So 600 pounds versus 1,660 pounds, it's almost 33% of the space versus ratio weight versus space with this bagging system. Makes a huge difference in terms of people who have warehouse operations, limited in space. It allowed us to be able to be competitive right across Canada versus just dealing within our local market with the boxes before.
And the reason why we're competitive is actually a very important point that Mark is bringing up. Rags are a commodity product. So when we say commodity, it means high volume, low margin. More importantly, it's one where the freight component, meaning shipping the product from our location to the customer's doors, is a key factor in the total cost of the rag. Now in Canada, we are the largest manufacturer and distributor of rags, so our pricing is bare none. However, we couldn't compete, as an example, in a location like Vancouver with a mom and pop store. Why? Even though the underlying cost of their product is much higher than ours, by the time we have it freight all the way out to Vancouver versus the mom and pop shop who's already, let's say, in Vancouver, our cost would ultimately be more to sell to the client than it would the mom and pop. And so finding ways to get more bags, more products on the same pallet, which is a flat fee, is key. So introducing compressed bag was a key attribute, as Mark said, in getting more product on the pallet, therefore increasing the volume of that pallet. If you had a big pallet full of DVDs, for example, DVD players, a full pallet DVD players would be worth $10,000. So you wouldn't mind paying $500 for the freight portion of that pallet. So shipping a $10,000 pallet with only $500 of freight is okay. But that very same pallet filled with rags is only worth
maybe $800.
Maybe $800. It's still costing you $500 to get it shipped. So you can see that $500 and $800 cost, that means the total cost is $1,300, of which $500 is freight. Whereas for the DVD players, the total cost is $10,500, of which only $500 is freight. That's why it's very key. Now, Mark, we also still have the boxes, and if you'd like to introduce them.
So, yes, we still have the demand for the standard everyday boxes where you just throw in 10 pounds or 25 pounds into the box. It is hand compressed to fit into the thing, so it's not all stuffed. And people like that because it's own self-dispensing system. Now, we've countered that by offering our clients, say, a free box on the top of a pallet. You create your own box, you open up your bag and you throw it into the box. It becomes its own self-dispensing system, and it counters that argument of, I need to have my box because I like to take the rags out of the box. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is we've created what we call our C box, compressed box. So the machine has a sleeve that we fit that plastic bag over before the rags are pistoned out into the bag. Well, instead of putting a plastic bag over that sleeve, now we just put a box. Same amount of space, a little bit more because the box itself takes up more room than the bag. So instead of getting, in its case of a 25-pounder, 1,650 pounds onto the pallet, we'll get 44 bags or 1,100 pounds. Still a heck of a lot more than the 600 pounds. It's more than double that you normally get with the hand-compressed boxes. The machine-compressed boxes are still double. So the effect is still there. We have it available in both 10 and 25-pound C boxes in the system. The last thing we talked about was, of course, the standard hand compressed boxes. We have different locations that have different size packaging available. So in some places there's a 5, 10, 25, and as much as 50-pound boxes available in the hand compressed version.
Now, if I'm correct, that's mostly in the United States with our ATM division.
Well, we do have the 10s and the 25s available in Canada. We still have demands for that format, but you'll see the 5 to 20 to 50 pounders in ATM mostly.
So if we recap again, we have compressed bags for 4 pounders, 10 pounders, 25 pounders. Then we go to, that's the best option. Then we move to a compressed box where we offer the 10 pounder and the 25 pounder. So a little bit more space, but still better. And then the last option is the non-compressed, the manually just piled boxes, which we offer in the 5 pounder, 10 pounder, 25 pounder, and 50 pounder. Now there's no right or wrong, it's just a question of what the client prefers. But obviously we want to promote the compressed bag option because it's more bang for the buck for us, but most importantly for the client.
And it is reflected in the price list. If you were to take your price list and work out your cost per pound on a 25-pound bag versus a 25-pound box in hand compression, there's a fairly significant difference in price. If client is counting his pennies, he will more likely go with the bag. Costs us less to produce, we pass those savings on to the client. So we talked about C-Box. C-Box is a part number that's in our system for the compressed boxes. So we'll get into the part number system that we've created for everybody to kind of understand what it is we're doing. So in talking about part numbers, there's a little bit of jargon that you need to understand. We'll start with the name Balbriggan. Balbriggan is an old English term for what we call a tricot or a knitted jersey material. We've adopted that as being our color t-shirt name. And why is that? Well, it's used a great deal in one of the markets that we compete in the Maritimes. They use the term Balbriggan. We adopted it for our own clientele as well because we wanted to make ourselves a little bit different. If someone's looking for colored t-shirts and they're asking for Balbriggan, well, we know, for instance, that they're probably buying from one of our distributors and to tread lightly. So it's a little bit of a telltale for us. So Balbriggan, being our most popular item, goes by many, many other names. And you might hear these kind of names out in the marketplace, so you need to be aware of them. You will hear Balbriggan, you will hear a t-shirt, you will hear polo, you will hear tricot, that's more of a French name. You will hear Gansey. Gansey is again an old term for new. And so when you hear Gansey, my first inclination always to think of new materials, so our new mill-ends. However, when you go to Western Canada, they use the word Gansey for white t-shirts. So you'll see the word Gansey out there, and of course the word jersey, which kind of encompasses them all. In our case, our nomenclature here at Wipeco, we use the word jersey for our new materials. So a new white jersey, or I should say a new white t-shirt is a new white jersey. A colored jersey, colored t-shirt is, a new colored t-shirt is colored jersey. So we use that term for new materials. It doesn't mean we're right. If you hear it out in the marketplace and we're not selling them, it could be used for colored t-shirts as well. It can be used either way. Another aspect of the materials is the use of the letter Z. In our part numbers, whenever we're referring to Z, chances are it is a manufactured wiper. Okay, not necessarily new, because we have new disposable wipers. Z is used as a manufactured wiper, meaning that in the case of a terry towel, if it has Z in it, it means it's been bought overseas as a first quality terry bar wiper. And it goes into a few other, mostly in the terry industry, you'll see the Z number in there. What else?
And it also means usually that the product will be more consistent, am I correct?
Well, if it's a manufactured wiper, it's made under our guides to our client to our supplier to give us what we want. And yes, so it will be from one piece to the next, very, very consistent.
So you've mentioned a little bit earlier, you talked about mill ends, you talked about recycled clothing, you've used a lot of these words.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit how we source our different products?
Sure. It'll give you a good idea of the different values we put forward as well. So for instance, the major source of the used clothing comes from organizations that export used clothing overseas, whether it goes to third world countries like Pakistan or India or somewhere in Africa or South America. These organizations have clients overseas that'll purchase from them clothing that is still wearable. So they grade out everything that's still wearable, and we'll get whatever's left over or stuff that they might have too much of. There's way too much sweatshirts out there, there's way too much t-shirts out there. They only grade out the real cream of the crop stuff. We get a lot of this stuff which is still wearable, but unfortunately there's just too much of it, and we give it a last life. That is our purpose here in recycling textiles, is to give these textiles a last life.
So you mean when I donate clothes to my local charities, those clothes are not necessarily reused by other people?
Well, not everything can be reused. Some of it is on its last legs. And the charities, when they get those products, they need to create cash flow. So there's a certain very small percentage of it that might be used within their local community to be either sold or given away as necessary. But the majority of it is actually not even, those bags not even opened. They'll be given straight to a grader, a guy who will open up those bags and find, stuff could be called vintage clothing, which is really the gold, where they get these old things that they can sell for, $50 a piece or $100 a piece, or fur coats or worn out jeans where they're worn out perfectly and they'll get extra dollars for it. So that's considered vintage clothing. A lot of stuff, like I said, is not necessarily opened until it reaches these used clothing guys. And you can go to a used clothing shop in your local market and see some of the stuff you might have given away, 6 months before as it's gone through the cycle. But the stuff that is not wearable or there is too much of, that eventually comes to us. If it's not being worn overseas, then, like I said, we give it a last life. The charities get money from the graders on a per pound basis for these credentials being the terminology used for unopened bags of unsorted unsorted clothing. And when they buy the credentials, they give the best value, most amount of money to these graders, and then the graders then sell us the product to make the wipers out of.
So that's recycled clothing.
Yes.
What else do we have?
Well, Wipeco's history, part of a family of companies, has been that we recycled new materials. So we would go to the manufacturers of clothing all throughout the eastern seaboard in North America, leave empty trucks, and they would fill it up with their scrap textiles, whether it would be end-of-lined rolls. So say for the sake of argument, they had 1,000 rolls of XYZ material and they only needed 992 of them, while those other 8 would end up being thrown in as, given a last life, being sold to Allied Textile or Wipeco Industries. The other portion of it is clippings. When they're on, the materials are laid out on the cutting table, they cut out their pattern. So for instance, in this particular case, it would have been that, t-shirt like this. They would have cut out this pattern, and then this material would go to the people who would cut and sew, or I should say just sew the material, and what was left around that, the little clippings, that would come to Wipeco to be sold as either clippings or the bigger pieces as wipers. And there was also a division that used to do 3/4 of a yard up pieces, and they would roll those up and sell it to organizations throughout the world who would create clothing from those big pieces of textile.
So it's kind of like when you make cookies on the weekend at home. You have that big sheet of dough that's usually rectangular, usually placed, and then by the time you input all of your shapes into the dough, you always end up with these edges, whether on the top or on the bottom or wherever it may be. These are the clippings Mark is referring to.
That's right.
This is what we call in the industry our mill ends. So either the big roll that they just had way too much of that they ended up throwing away because the job called for 1,000 units of this, and the roll had some left, so that's perfectly rectangular, still unused, uncut pieces, or the clippings, those extras that are left as you are cutting in your molds for your t-shirts or your pants or whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah. Another source, used to be a huge source for us, was the knitters, the people who actually knit the material before it went to the organizations that would cut and sew the material. The machines themselves would sometimes be defective. A needle would break, and it would create a line through the material that they could not sell to to make clothing out of. And so we would get tens and thousands of pounds of this material, what we call Gansey or New Jersey material, in rolls, and we have our own industrial laundry. We'd convert that natural material into a washed white new mill end, and turn it into gold, really, because it went from being a highly unabsorbent natural cotton material into this perfect wiping cloth that could be used for just about any application out there.
And as I mentioned earlier, again, the reason why we wash it is to break the cotton fibers, the same as your dish towel. You break the cotton fibers, it becomes absorbent. Because if we were to sell it as a new product without having washed it, then it wouldn't be quite as absorbent as we want it to be.
Yeah, and to further that also, we've created our own formulas with the laundering process, which allow it to break up that cotton faster than if you were to just put it into your regular laundry at home. If you took the natural jersey material off of one of these rolls and put it through your wash at home, it might take 4 or 5 washes before it became absorbent to the point of one industrial wash. Basically because of the formulas that we've created, where we're using a peroxide-based wash and high temperatures, like over almost 200 degrees, almost to the boiling point, being washed for a certain amount of period of time. This all together, put together, created a situation that would break the cotton up and render these highly unabsorbent natural cotton into a white bleached absorbent cotton wiper.
So it's kind of like amplifying the wear and tear.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of that. Kind of like your stonewashed jeans, how they're perfectly blue when they come in, and now you have this pattern on there where they've worn out some stuff. Well, we're not throwing rocks at the rags, but it's kind of the same idea.
So in the new, are there other sources that we use?
Of course, yes. So we've talked about recycled clothing. We've talked about the new mill ends. The other area that we receive a great deal of our product and where we have huge contracts is a source from the hospital linens. So hospital linens being the same thing, you would go to a hospital and sleep in one of their beds. Well, all those linens that come off of there eventually get worn out, and we give them a last life, whether it be a fitted sheet in a jersey, a regular sheet, the bedspread cover that comes off of that, a white flannel blanket, huck towels that are used in the operating rooms, and even the terry towels that are used when you take a shower there, or face cloths when they're cleaning the baby's bottoms in the diapers.
Now hold on, Mark. You're telling me that we're recycling old clothing, old bedding from hospitals. Isn't there chemicals, diseases? I mean, this is hospital stuff.
That is a big concern, and the first thing I have to say to anybody is, if you're willing to sleep in a hospital bed, you'd be more than happy to work with one of these wipers. For the simple reason is, they've all gone through the same washing process. Before we receive them as a wiper, they come through the same washing process as the products that you sleep in that bed or use in the hospital, in the operating rooms and stuff like that. They are sterile. When they leave the hospital laundry, they are just as sterile as the bedding, so there's no issue there.
So in other words, what they do is when the laundries receive all the clothing, they wash everything. And then they decide if they deem a sheeting no longer fit because it's been too worn out. They only notice that once they've washed it. Once they're sorting it at the end, it's been washed, it's been cleaned, it's been sterilized, as Mark said. And this is when they decide, you know what, this sheet, it's humped its last leg, we're throwing it away. But it's been washed. Therefore, everything we get is actually much cleaner than even the t-shirt products that we sell, because we know it's been washed under heavy duty machinery that's made it almost sterile. So this is why you can sell that product with confidence that there will be no problems, it will not be dirty, and the client can use it very safely. It might be stained, there might be some red or some yellow on it that's stained, but it is as clean as any product could ever be.
Ideally. Makes for great wiping cloths. The goods that come from the laundries are obviously then laundered many times. They're usually highly cotton-based products, and therefore their performance is wonderful. When it comes to a wiping cloth, the laundry fits into usually the higher category of better and best because of that.
And that's pretty much all of our sourcing. So we have the old clothing, we have the mill ends, what we get from abroad, and we have the hospital linens that we get here locally or in your local markets as well.
Yeah.
If we were to turn to now product by product, so in the pamphlet, in the kit that you have in front of you, you should have a page that says rags and wipers, and it starts with reclaimed clothing wipers. You have a list of all the products. So if you don't have that in front of you, please pause the video, take the time to find it, and we will go through this one by one together. Mark?
So to get started, the first item is our most popular selling item, BX. BX is, as we talked about Balbriggan, the letter for Balbriggan, other names, knit, polo, etc. We won't go through that again. B being Balbriggan. X, whenever you see X in the second letter, it basically means nothing. It's a blank.
It's mixed.
Or yeah, I suppose it could be mixed, but I like to treat it as basically there's no attribute that we need to put to this other than the B. We know it's T-shirt, we know it's B, it covers the thing. You'll see the X will be replaced at some point with other letters as we go forward, and we'll explain to them as you go through it. So when you see an X, ignore it, it means nothing at this point in time.
So BX25 would be a 25 pound box of colored T-shirt. BX25C would be a 25 pound compressed bag of colored T-shirt. So if you find a C at the end of your 25, that means it's been compressed. Therefore, it is the compressed bag.
Yeah, a C after the weight. Okay, so BX-5, 10, 25, 50, and then a C at the end will be compressed. And we add other letters after the fact only if there's added value to it. So added value could be a P. P for private label. The labeling that goes on to, we do a lot of private labeling when we come to the compressed bags, and we'll put the customer's name on there. So if it has a P at the very end, it is private labeling. So customer name on there, and then we can get into the different components of a private label later. Other area, and the next letter up you would come down to, you would see BXW. Now we've introduced a third letter into the part number before the hyphen. The W, whenever you see a W before that, usually it refers to white. So in this particular case, Balbriggan, X meaning nothing, W for white. And then hyphen, again the weight, and then added value after that.
So BXW25, BXW50, BXW25C, BXW10C are all some of the examples that we would find.
Correct. Going down the list, you then come across CD. CD is pretty straightforward. It is corduroy. Corduroy's properties, and we've talked a lot about the properties of t-shirts, so what is corduroy? I think we all know what the material is. How does it fit into the comparison of, say, against colored t-shirts or against our standard, which is the rental shop towel? It is definitely a much heavier wiper. It is something that, unknown to many people, is actually quite absorbent, despite the fact that it's constructed a lot like jeans, and I talked about jeans being a dense, a very tightly woven product. Corduroy tends to have a little bit more trapping ability, and the one feature against it is that it's very heavy. So not a lot of pieces per pound, but what nice about it is usually it's pant leg material, so you get these nice square pieces. It makes for a nice standard wiper. As a used clothing wiper, it's actually quite nice from that point of view. Because it is heavy and because it is like 99.9% of the time 100% cotton, we see it used a lot in high heat applications. So a good example is there is muffler shops. A muffler shop will use corduroy because they have to handle hot mufflers when it comes in off the street and they're removing a muffler. It's hot. They use corduroy to grab the muffler off of it once they've cut it off the thing and take it down so they don't burn their hands. Again, anything high heat, furnaces, stuff like that, corduroy tends to be a really good thing. And why 100% cotton? Well, it's very simple. Cotton does not melt. It will burn if it's exposed to a flame, but it will not melt. And it is not a great conductor of heat either, so it can create some kind of an insulation for the client if they need that kind of an application. Conversely, the man-made fibers like polyester and nylon, etc., will melt. And if that's melting onto your hand could create some really bad burns. You definitely want to use 100% cotton in those kind of applications. And the last component of 100% cotton, which is really important, and you may come across this at some point in your time, is static. Cotton does not create static. It is a relatively static-free material. And when you're dealing with any place that creates munitions or any kind of fireworks or that kind of an application, static-free is something that they ask for, and you will find 99.9% of the time, if they know what they're talking about, you will want to have 100% cotton wiper in there. So a rental shop towel, or if they want to be inexpensive about it, then they might go to a thing like the corduroy where the percentage of cotton 99.9% of the time is 100%. But we make no claims. Understand, it's used clothing. We do not control the source of the raw materials. You cannot make the claim of 100% cotton when you're going into these circumstances. The only thing you can do is provide samples and let them test it themselves, and you don't ever sign your name to anything that makes those claims. Okay.
So that's CD.
That is
and we
CD.
offer that in what type of weights?
Basically, any weight is available. Any of these wipers that we're talking about, the denominations are usually available. The exception being fluffy goods, okay? Used colored terry is a good example, where you have bathrobes, which are really, thick material, and as they go through the compressed packaging machines, they tend to like grab at the sides and they can jam up the machines quite readily. So in those circumstances, you'll see on the price list, instead of a 10-pound compressed bag being available, it's only available in 8. Instead of a 25, it's available in 20 or even 15 in some circumstances. Things that have gone through the industrial laundry, because they've gone through the dryer, they tend to be fluffier, and the cotton is, sticks out a little bit more. What is fluffy, right? Is basically the cotton is puffy. So the cotton sticking out and almost creates tentacles and grabs at the machine as it's coming through. We cannot push the full weight through the machine, so we compromise by going to a 20-pounder instead of a 25, or even a 15, or an 8-pounder instead of a 10.
And those are the exceptions. And if you encounter some of these exceptions, please speak to your managers and they'll be able to walk you through them.
Absolutely. The next one down is CWL. And CWL, if you look at the description and the color, it's light colored. It's basically the same kind of material that Danny and I are wearing right now. It is a cotton-based, lightweight shirting material, so a woven material. This used to be the industry standard back in my day when dinosaurs were around. The 100% polyester and woven material was what people were wearing, so that's what we had available to sell when I first started in the rag business over 25 years ago. T-shirts, there were still some out there, wasn't as popular. We still had loads of these wovens available. Now what's happened is, if you look at the pricing of this woven material versus a t-shirt, it actually has no advantage. Despite the fact that it costs us less money to get, we can virtually get this kind of material almost for free. The fact that it has all these buttons on it, and the fact that it's lightweight, the cutting costs are enormous. Taking these buttons off takes a long time. Cutting into all of these extra seams that are there takes a long time, and it takes a lot of pieces to make up a pound, so it actually is less valuable as a wiper from our point of view, less profitable as a wiper than than the colored T-shirts.
So how can I remember CWL? What do they stand for?
So C would be cotton blends. The last letter L would be light colored, and the W, quite frankly, I don't know. Some of these part numbers were made before or without my attention to it, so I don't know what the W is. So CXC is the next one up. Again, cotton blends, dark colored. Same idea, they are wovens, but they tend to be more heavyweight wovens. Things like pant legs, but cotton pant legs. You might find a little bit of corduroy in there, something like that. The same idea, it's cotton, X colored, and looks just a little bit heavier goods. CXW is again cotton blends, but pure white. So our major source for this particular material is, again, this kind of material, shirting, stuff like that, but it tends to be a mixture of lightweight and heavyweight. A butcher's uniform would give you a good example of what we get. When we get goods from the laundries, we get the butcher's uniform, so that the coveralls, the shirting, the pant legs, all become part of this CXW product. DL, denim pant legs, pretty straightforward. We talked about it already a great deal. Heavyweight stuff, not a lot of pieces per pound, but very consistent in terms of the fact that we probably cut out the tops. We're only using the denim legs, so you get quite a nice consistent wiper with the denim pant legs. Flannel, very, very popular item in much, much short supply. Super soft, high percentage cotton, very absorbent because of the fluffy cotton. And this is a property we have not talked about actually, Danny, and this is one of the things we should bring up right now is some of these materials are brushed.
Smooth versus brushed.
Yes, smooth versus brushed. So a T-shirt is basically a smooth material. A flannel or a fleece has at least one side that's brushed. What that basically means is we've taken a material, and here's a very good example of a material that's not been brushed. So if you can zoom in on that, you will see that there's a texture to this material. There's like a looping to it, and that looping is what we consider to be unbrushed fleece. So here is an example of a sweatshirt material, a knitted sweatshirt material that has not been brushed yet. And what happens is they take a roller, which has little needles on it, and roll it at very, very high speed and just touch those materials as they're going by, and it basically breaks it up and turns it into a fluffy material. A flannel is a very light brush. A fleece is a heavy brush where you get big, long fibers sticking out. So here's an example of a sweatshirt material, so something that's been brushed, and see how it's fluffy. Well, this one, obviously, it's a compressed fluffiness. It's been worn out and washed and stuff like that, so you don't have as much of the effect as you would with the new. But this is after the needles have gone over it. That is the same material as what you saw before, but brushed.
And why is it important to know the difference between smooth and brushed?
Well, brushed basically dictates that it's going to be more linty. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we've discovered too is, in the case of a light brush, it's not necessarily the case, but in the case of a heavy brush like a fleece, it actually tends to reduce the absorbency of the material. For whatever reason, instead of allowing for more trapping of the material like you would think maybe the brush would do, it actually tends to repel the water. And I can't confirm this, but I'm almost convinced that when they're constructing a sweatshirt, the side that's unbrushed is more polyester, and the side that's smooth is cotton. So you have the polyester against your skin, which is super soft, and that would explain why the brush portion of this does not absorb anywhere near as the smooth side of a sweatshirt. So that's one of my suspicions. I have no documented proof that it's true, but I think that's the case in all of my years of experience. So we talked about flannel. The next one down is sweatshirt. It is SXC, S for sweatshirt, S for sweatshirt, C for colored in this particular case, and then dash the the weight. So in this particular case, usually when there's no indication of the third letter being a C, like in the BX and in the FX, it means colored. In this particular case, the C has been added to make fleece into, to actually identify the color with the C in the part number. But by default, if there isn't a W in there at the third letter, it is colored. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the part numbers. We looked at the fleece, we talked about it already. Remember, one side smooth, one side brushed. The smooth side tends to be the absorbent side. The brush side tends to be less absorbent. And it's a heavy material, so not a lot of pieces per pound compared to a t-shirt. Even though it's exactly the same material as t-shirt, a poly cotton blend, it's a less popular item in certain applications. The guys who really like fleece. Why? Because of the density, it can sop up a little bit more, the thickness. Think about it also that in a t-shirt, it's a thin material, right? And especially if you start getting into threadbare t-shirts, when you're wiping something and it goes through the t-shirt, it ends up on your hand. In some cases where there's a lot of saturation, a lot of liquid to pick up or whatever it is they're trying to pick up, they don't want it to go through onto their hand. They want to have that heavy material. And so think about the application. If they don't want it to penetrate through onto their hands, thicker the better under those circumstances. So continuing down, you come to SXG. So logic dictates that it is sweatshirt, X for nothing, and then G, because we're talking about color, G represents gray. When you look at the spectrum of colors, when you're manufacturing clothing, 70 to 75% of the clothing is in different colors, black being popular, red being another popular one. 15% of what is produced in sweatshirt is in the gray material. We pull it out for a couple of different reasons. Number one, you see the dirt well on gray. And number two, it looks like white. If you were to take this particular gray sweatshirt, as it is, you have one side that's relatively dark, but fold it and it comes into a bundle like this, well, it actually looks like it's white. So I call it fool's gold. Gray tends to not leach, so you kind of take away that argument of leaching colors because it is a lighter color. Usually you'll see it in the heather colors, like the lighter grays as well. It is a good substitute for white. We do the same thing with the colored balbriggan, the t-shirt material. We do have, it's not indicated here, but we do have BXG available as well for the same argument, where a guy wants to be able to see the dirt, and he wants to have less of instance of leaching. The gray could be a good option, and it actually bring the cost down compared to white as well. So gray sweatshirts is there for that reason. And then the next one down, SXW, again, sweatshirt, X for nothing, and W for white. So here you're going to see a pure white sweatshirt material, same idea, one side brushed, one side not brushed, the white so that if you're dealing with chemicals or you want to see the dirt, it's important to go to the white fleece. In the reclaimed clothing, the next one down is TXC. TXC is terry. So T for terry towels, X for nothing, C for colored. What is the source of the colored terry? In general, this particular part number, it dictates that it is bathrobe material. Most of the goods that are in the used colored terry are in bathrobes. So here's a couple of good pointers, things to look out for when you're quoting against someone else in the used colored terry market. Number one is with bathrobes, there's a lot of heavy collars, there's lots of heavy pockets, there's the belt looping. The most economical terry you're going to find is going to be the ones that have no qualms about keeping those onto that. And you'll end up with, a lot of pieces that are not really that great to use, and they're usually very, very heavy, therefore getting very, very few pieces per pound. The value is low. It leaves a lot of lint. Lots of poor properties, but why do we sell out of it all the time? It's a great sopping up rag. The guys who are trying to pick up spills or pick up lots of liquids and stuff, that terry is wonderful for putting it down and just picking it up and being able to throw it away very easily for a very good price. The other components of terry that are mixed in sometimes are, we talked about a contract that we had for baby clothing. So baby clothing is a knitted material which has one side smooth and one side with the looping that you see in terry. It is, in some circumstances, mixed into the bathrobe material to make up a more economical version of the TXC. So you'll see in the marketplace sometimes some terry that's 25 to 30 to 40% cheaper than what we offer this particular item. You have to see the product. You have to look in the bag and see, is he including the baby towel, the baby clothing toweling in there. And usually if you see that kind of price point, that is the case, because its value is similar to t-shirts. So it's about 50% cheaper to use that, and when you start mixing it in, it makes for a much more economical wiper. So this is one to look out for. And of course, there's always some toweling in there. You'll see the odd piece of actual colored towels that are in there, which is obviously the better product that can be in there, but no one's going to argue about that. The next product down is TXW. Again, terry, T for terry, X for nothing, and W for white. Same idea. Same concept. It is bathrobe material. It is a little bit of toweling in there. You might see a little bit more white towels in there than you see bathrobes, because it's more readily available. But again, you got to watch out for the baby clothing terry that's in there to bring the price down. So same idea as the colored terry, and the only difference is, of course, it is white versus colored.
So that covers all of the reclaimed clothing portion of our products. Now, the question I have for you, Mark, especially for our new employees, is, it seems like a lot. What are the most common ones that they should get to know from the beginning?
Well, if we go back through the list, okay, you'll find that more than 50% of your sales are in t-shirts, whether they be white, near white, or colored. So you need to know the good, better, best aspects of t-shirt material, whether it be used clothing or new material, or the added value features of putting it through the laundry. That'll be very important for you to go forward, because most of your inquiries will be for that particular
So the
product.
BXs and the BXWs.
And we didn't talk about it, but BXN, which is near white, we have to add that in. That is also part of it. And of course the BXG, which is the gray. Yeah, those are by far the most popular. The next step down might be fleece, because for all intents and purposes, it's the same product in terms of its components as t-shirts. It's just a little heavier, and it is less expensive on a per pound basis. The fleece is popular for that reason. After that, the other products, you won't sell anywhere near as much for it. You might, between the fleece and the t-shirts, it'll represent a good 60 to 70% of what you sell. Everything else makes up the difference. White colored flannel is not readily available. We discourage you from selling it because we're pretty well sold out of it. Light colored, no one's going to want it. Corduroy, if you find clients for it, they'll be few and far between, but those who like it really love it. And everything else is, a little bit here, a little bit there.
And again, focus on the main sellers, focus on the products that, from day one you will be talking about repeatedly. And the specialty products, of course, we want you to learn all of them, but you can also refer to your managers or to this presentation once more to be able to get a refresher once that product is actually required in a quote. So following that, we will move on to the third page. So I invite you to change to your third page, and we're going to be talking about reclaimed linen wipers. So that whole hospital linen that we talked about a little bit earlier. So Mark, some of the codes.
So to start, there's an AP code, which is basically aprons. Not readily available, tends to be a lot more towards the 100% polyester these days. So not a very important code, but it is there for a guy who wants to have rectangular pieces of polycotton or cotton or polyester material, it is available at a good price. SHC is sheeting. SH is always sheeting. C for colored. Basically, you're dealing with a hospital sheet that has been, usually it's in a pastel, like a light blue or a yellow or even pink. You'll see these sheets. Makes for a nice wiper. Rectangular pieces, lots of pieces per pound. The issue is what did it start out with as a polycotton? Is it a 70-30 polyester cotton? How much cotton is left in it? Depends on the source of the hospital. You almost have to get to know your local source to know. Look at the samples, take a look at it, see what's there. Makes for an excellent value product because of the number of pieces per pound. Again, getting back to components of the wiper, let's make a comparison. T-shirts, which is our most popular wiper, would, say for the sake of argument, run around 50 cents a pound, whereas colored sheeting might run about 75 cents a pound, and I'm talking Canadian dollars here. So it's 50% more expensive to go to a sheeting. But you might get, and I'm going by my experiences in the past, somewhere between 6 and 8 pieces of colored T-shirts in a bag per pound, versus somewhere around, say, 14 to 16 of shop towel size sheeting material. So when you actually look at it on a cost per piece point of view, the sheeting is less expensive than the T-shirt on a cost per piece point of view. So when you're looking at a guy who has lots of uses and wants to have seamless material, because a sheet basically is a seamless material, and consistency, colored sheeting is actually a very, very good option to show. So colored sheeting, CTC is tablecloth, again, not readily available, tends to be more 100% polyester, but you get nice square pieces, very consistent, something that mostly available down at our ATM location. HT is Huck Towels. Now Huck Towels is a premium wiper. Why? Because, let's think about where it's used. It's used in a critical application in operating rooms. So lint-free, will not leave lint, so that when they're operating, it's not leaving lint in the wherever they're operating.
So what is a Huck towel, Mark?
Okay, a Huck towel basically, the standard is about a 15-inch wide by 26-inch long, 100% cotton material, which is woven in such a way to create a bit of a surface on it so it has good friction, but is woven tight enough and with really, really high quality cotton. And so here's another point, when you're dealing with different qualities of cotton out in the marketplace, you have recycled cotton, which is basically torn up old clothing or something, or torn up material. And when it's torn up and made into fibers, the fibers tend to be very, very short. So a recycled cotton, when it's washed, you'll get a lot more lint in your dryer because it doesn't stay together very well. It won't last as long. It'll lose shape very, very quickly. As you get into higher quality, you talk about a Turkish towel. You talk about a Huck towel. They're made with long fiber cotton. That long fiber, when it's interwoven, stays together a lot longer. It'll keep its shape longer. In the case of a Huck towel, that long fiber gives you a really, really high quality cotton that will last a long time, will not leave lint, and very popular in critical applications like window washing, where they'll wash down a window, don't want to leave lint behind, and a Huck towel is used as a final prep, and it'll finish the window very nice and clean, streak-free, as they say. So, and very absorbing because it is 100% cotton. So it's used in the operating room, 100% cotton, finished edges most of the time. We can't promise that because it is recycled, and so sometimes there's a hole in it, sometimes an edge is frayed. There's a reason why we get these products. They're finished. They can't be used for their primary purpose, and in this particular case, the Huck towel cannot be used in an operating room anymore when we get it. So it's lost a bit of its critical application into its use. So HT Huck towel, there's different colors available. Sometimes there's white, sometimes there's green, sometimes there's blue. There's even a grading process at ATM for better quality versus more distressed, where there's might be more holes in it and stuff like that. Depends on your location. You'll need to talk to your managers about what is available at your location. Okay? Very important to know that. White sheeting, SHW, so SH always means sheeting, W for white. We talked about the colored, same product. The only difference is, of course, it's no longer pastel, it is pure white, and it will not leach color. The only difference between the two. CBW, this is thermal blanket. In this particular case, a white thermal blanket. What is a thermal blanket? Well, when you're in the hospital and you're on one of those beds, the top blanket, sometimes they're considered to be duvets or whatever. The ones we keep are made of 100% cotton. It's a relatively thick material, but it's highly absorbent because of the 100% cotton properties of it, and makes for actually a very, very good wiper. It's just, again, not a lot of pieces per pound because of its heaviness, and not necessarily readily available. You need to pre-qualify availability before you start going to market with either the CBW or the CBC, which is the same thing but colored. Okay. FXW is flannel sheeting, one of the most popular items available through the hospital system. Why? It's a brushed material, number one, and a very, very high percentage cotton. So super soft, will not scratch when you're wiping stuff down with it. Highly absorbent. People love this product when they're using it because of the absorbency, because of the softness, the fact that it doesn't scratch. It can be used in the Jansan industry for doing windows or just general purpose dusting. A very versatile wiper, so it does just about anything you ask it to do. So that's white flannel. Again, rectangular pieces, no seams in it. So one of the higher end, in the good, better, best scheme of things, is definitely in the best category. After white flannel, you have WTC, more tablecloths and napkins. In this particular case, more of a darker color option as opposed to multicolor, specifically probably blacks and dark browns. TXC. Now this is also some of the things that come from hospitals can be bathrobes as well, and some of the terry towels that we get from there as well. So in this particular case, there's a bit of redundancy because TXC and the used clothing side of things is not necessarily as clean. The TXC is distinguished, I think, at ATM because coming from the hospitals, it is enormously clean coming out of the laundry. TUW is large towels. So the bath towels that you get from the laundries in when you're going to take a shower at a hospital, they'll give you a towel which is anywhere between 20 inches by 40 inches and up to the big bath towels like 26 by 52. And you'll get all sorts of stuff in between. Or we get also these towels from hotels. So we get these really, really heavy industrial or hotel quality towels from there, and those are also included in the large laundered terry towel here as well. TLW is the smaller versions of this. So either they come in as a
face cloth?
Nope, separate category. You're right, but not, because it's a separate category for face cloth. But in this particular case, it would be a bar wiper 16 by 19 or a hand towel 15 by 25. Or if we don't have enough stock in that size, we'll take the big towels and cut them and make them into regular towel size. The key here is we will not guarantee the edging. Obviously, we don't overlock the edges. To finish the edges of those towels, the edges could be, you could have 2 or 3 edges that have no finished edge, so it can be somewhat linty. But it is, because it is a towel, rectangular piece, is very popular with our clientele. The last item with the reclaimed linen wipers is the face cloth. So here you have a nice controlled size, usually 11 or 12 by 12, and as a replacement for a rental shop towel is ideal. It is, number one, cleaner than a rental shop towel. It is very consistent in terms of sizing, and terry will outperform any other product that's out in the marketplace in terms of the friction. If you need to, scrub something, it'll come off very readily, and the absorbency is there as well. So the face cloth is very, very popular, usually in short supply. Be very careful going to market with face cloths. The next section is much smaller. We're dealing with mill-end wiping cloths. So mill-ends comes from the tables of, the cutting tables of the manufacturing of clothing, and you have usually a nice rectangular sized piece of wiper in a high percentage cotton. Why high percentage? Because this material has not gone through an industrial, it's not gone through a home laundry. It's not used clothing. It's not gone through 25 or 50 or 100 cycles of wash. The lint that's left in the dryers, you no longer have that issue. So
it's a new material.
It's new material, exactly. So seamless, this stuff in general, and I'll qualify that in saying to you that sometimes new materials are made from t-shirts that have defects in it. So if a manufacturer has created these t-shirts and through the inspection process they find pinholes, they cannot sell it. And sometimes they have a market for these pinhole type places. They sell it as a t-shirt, but many times they'll sell it to raggers like ourselves, and we'll cut up that new material, it's never been used, and put it into our rags and consider it to be new nonetheless. So you will have the odd piece of new material in new white mill ends that are come from t-shirts or similar constructed clothing. So if we look at the part numbers, J for jersey, we said right at the beginning when we're talking about part numbers that jersey is how we call new t-shirt material. T, which in this particular case means thin. It also, in this particular case, is defaulted to smooth. So jersey T, which is thin and smooth, W for white, and after the hyphen, if you have a W, it means it's gone through a laundry. It's been washed. Why would this be washed? For two reasons. Number one, it is our best, in our best category. It is therefore very absorbent. We've put it through the laundering process to render it more absorbent than like your demonstration about the dishcloth. The dishcloth is not absorbent until you wash it a few times. In this particular case, the same idea with the new material, in this case t-shirt. We put it through a laundering process so that it becomes absorbent. It's seam-free in general, like 99.5% of the time it will be seam-free. And it is also less linty. We talked about cutting into the edges of t-shirt material inherently does not leave lint. Of course, there's always going to be the odd piece that will, if you were to shake it, for instance, a good test of linting, right after the cutting process, there is a little bit of lint that'll come off. Putting it through the laundering process eliminates all that little extra lint, so it's as lint-free and as absorbent as you're going to get in a jersey material. So the JTWW is the premium product. It is controlled for its smoothness and its thickness. It's not going to be a thick material. Lots of pieces per pound. The next one down is JXWW. So J for jersey, again, always the nomenclature of jersey in there. X means, in this particular case, Danny referred to X as being mixed. This is the case. This is the one exception where X actually has a meaning. It is mixed jersey, white for W, first W, and then washed. What do we mean by mixed? In this particular case, we've said that the other one is all smooth and thin. Well, what about the stuff that they manufacture that's not smooth and thin? This is where this stuff falls in. What kind of material what kind of constructions, what kind of knits are you going to see in there? So if you were to take a t-shirt, there's one component of the t-shirt that is the collar. So this little collar is made of what we call rib knit. And why rib knit? Because your neck, when it goes over your head, it needs to stretch. This material is made to have a mechanical stretch, so that it's the same component, still 100% cotton, but the way it's knitted, it actually can expand and come back on itself, almost like an elastic. And so it'll go over your head and fall back into place and look really good on you, like me. But it is not a smooth material. It is a ribbed material, which if you're in a critical application and using that wiper to wipe, it could conceivably leave a streak. So that fits into the X. Another construction that fits into the X that I brought here to show you is, once again, the unbrushed fleece. So you can see here that this is a white jersey knit, but it's a sweatshirt material that's not been brushed. You will find this in the JXWW. This is actually a wonderful material, relatively lint-free, fits into the same category as any of the new white jerseys, but it's a little bit heavier, therefore it will give you a little bit more absorbency. This makes for a really nice material. Unfortunately, we do not grade it as such, so it is part of the mixture you will find in the JX. Another thing you'll find in there is thermal. So your thermal underwear that you would wear in the wintertime, or sometimes as a fashion, you sometimes see t-shirts or long sleeve shirts that are made of thermal. This is the pattern that you get with thermal. It makes for a wonderful wiper as well. It creates a lot of surfaces. And we talked about the absorbency component of cotton and also being able to trap dirt. So the fact that there's a lot of surfaces here can trap the dirt, it absorbs very well. And the texture also gives good friction. When you're using it to rub, it creates more friction than a smooth piece would. So if you're trying to clean something and you need a little bit more friction, terry towel is perfect for that. But some of the next step down in terms of giving that friction, a thermal wiper or an unbrushed fleece offers that as well. There are other components to the knits which are not here. Some that are a little bit less popular, like a heavy rib, okay, where there's thick ribbing through there. It is probably the least popular of the options in the JXW, but you will find that in there as well. And you can just look at a bag. Usually you'll find a few pieces in a bag of that, more often than not. The last part number for the mill end wiping cloths is JXC. So same idea, J for jersey, X for mixed, and C for colored. So mixed, you will get some of these different constructions in there. In general, if I was to say to you what percentage, you will not see too much of the mixed knits in there. You'll usually find mostly it being smooth. It comes with what is produced. Most of what is produced is the body of a t-shirt, which is the smooth jersey portion of it, and the balances are all complementary. So it's either fashion or, in the case of thermal, practicality for heat retention, or the rib knit. Those are produced in much smaller quantities. We get what is produced, and so you'll see most of the colored jersey being smooth with a little bit of the other stuff mixed in. So that concludes
the best category.
Best category.
Mark, you always like to use the approach of saying good, better, best, and we will see this is a recurring theme in all of our product lines. So in the case of wipers, how would you qualify the good, the better, and the best?
Well, usually good falls into the category of used clothing. Why? Simply because it has seams in it. There's no instances of us cutting the seams out completely. As a matter of fact, when we talked about our BXW and the special cut, I categorize that in the better category. In the better category, simply because it is a better wiper. We've made it into a better wiper. So good usually fits into used clothing because of the consistency of the product and the seams that are in there, consistency in size, consistency in thickness of the material. The cotton's been washed out, and the consistency in the fact that it has seams in it as well. The good category,
the better category,
skipping to the next step, I always go to the top, what can I tell you? To the better category, we fit into things like that have more consistency to it. Thing that looks that much closer to a shop towel in terms of being the shop towel being the optimum product in terms of its properties. So higher percentage cotton, softer material, more absorbency.
Such as?
Cleaner materials. So used clothing tends to be a little bit less clean. New materials, as soon as you hop to the laundry category, they've gone through the industrial laundry. They are cleaner. They do tend to apples be put into the better category because they are cleaner. So more of a seamless product. Sheeting, for instance. Sheeting is a nice flat material made from a poly cotton blend. What percentage of cotton we don't know, depends on how many times it's been washed. But you will have a rectangular piece of wiper with no seams in it, therefore giving you more consistency, falling into the better category.
And then if we move on to the best category.
Best category, basically you've taken your shop towel properties and compromised just a little bit maybe with the best category as a disposable wiper. So in this particular case, a shop towel has a bordered edge, right? None of the products we talked about, with maybe the exception of a Huck towel, which we can't guarantee, has a bordered edge. Maybe some of the used bar wipers have a bordered edge, but there's no guarantee of it, so we can't say that it is equivalent to a shop towel. A shop towel always have a bordered edge. So absorbency, 100% cotton, higher percentage cotton, absorbency, cleanliness, seamlessness. Again, those are the key components. So you start dealing with white flannel, perfect example of one of the perfect wipers out there. The only difference between that and the shop towel, it doesn't have a bordered edge. From a cleanliness, from an absorbency point of view, a new shop towel, I prefer flannel over a shop towel. Recycled white terry towels. So the TLW, the laundered terry, again, a wonderful clean product, very absorbent, very, gives lots of friction because of the looping in there. What else is in the laundered industry, laundered component? There's a lot of best in there because of the fact that they've come through the laundry and there's a lot of rectangular pieces. CBW. If it wasn't for the fact that there's a lot of pieces, a lot of heavy pieces in there, would be probably in the best category. As such, maybe it's only good, or in the better category because it's a heavy wiper.
So again, what's important to remember here is there are good, better, and best solutions to offer your clients. This here concludes our presentation about the rags. We hope you've enjoyed this. Feel free to view it again if you have any questions. Direct those questions also to your respective managers and also to Mark, who's available to answer all of these questions at any time. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.